again and welcome back to the roads of the Tour de France. Well, we're in the final week of the race and the riders by the end of the day will feel extremely happy. The mountains of this year's race will be behind them, but today they still have two to come. Soon after the start today they climb the 2,115-metre Col du Tourmalet, then they go on to the Col d'Aubisque, and then they'll have a couple of hours of reasonably flat roads before they reach the finish in Pau, but it'll be another tough day. Let's remind ourselves as to the overall classification. Indurain did rock a little bit yesterday, but he didn't lose anything at all. In fact, he slightly increased his lead over Alvaro Mejia in second place. Tony Rominger is still the man to watch out for. He was second yesterday. He lies in fourth place. And you can see that Phil Anderson is still very much in the Tour de France, although there's no way now he's going to make up too much of that lost time. Hot news today from the start line here in Tarbes is that Eric Breukink has injured his knee, and one of the pre-race favourites is now out of the Tour de France. Let's go across now to Alan Piper, who is with some of the riding stars of this year's Tour de France.
Zenon, ieri vinci il tappa, oggi terzo classificazione, che penso per Paris?
Che rimani così come adesso, primi tre a Parigi, sono contento. Sono contento anche che sono vinto ieri a tappa, che c'è molto buona vittoria, che qualcuno vince, una tappa Tour de France.
E per dopo il contramonte?
Cronometro penso che posso rimanere i primi 5, primi 6, non lo so. L'importante è che si arrivi vicino a Rominger, che poi possiamo giocare con lui per il secondo posto, penso.
E Mejia?
Mejia, che cronometro, come visto l'ultima volta, non è andato tanto forte. Possibile Chiappucci. Salita pedala bene, ieri un po' perso, solo che possibile una giornata un po' crisi. Poi Rominger ha attaccato molto forte. Sono rimasto Indurain in rotta, poi io sono un po' ripreso, fortuna così.
E in Polonia, che dici al giornale?
Sono contenti che adesso c'è un po' crisi in Polonia di sport. Ieri anche i giornalisti sono telefonati a me all'albergo, sono tanti amici che sono contenti come me.
Miguel, hier c'était très dur, non?
Sí, ayer la a San Laré es un puerto duro, un poco complicado, y Rominger ha subido muy fuerte.
Tu penses que Rominger il est plus fort que toi hier?
No, pagué un poco más fuerte. La llegada era mejor para Rominger que para mí. Era un porcentaje muy duro, 10-11%, y el viso más o menos igual.
Et Jaskula fait formidable parce que lui il est lâché, il est revenu et il gagne encore l'étape. T'es prévu? Tu penses qu'il peut faire ça?
Sí, Jaskula va mejor al final de este tour. Al principio el Galibier y tal, un poco peor que Rominger y que yo, pero ahora al final está fuerte.
Bonne chance aujourd'hui.
Merci.
And the rollout this morning, Michel Dernice, a little bit too anxious to make the start because he almost collides here with the race director's car. A long ride away from Tarbes today. In fact, rather surprisingly, it's only the 8th time in race history that the race has visited Tarbes here on the edge of the Pyrenees. And as we come into the town of La Mongie, 5 kilometres from the top of the Col du Tourmalet, Tony Rominger and Claudio Chiappucci are at it again. They're testing Miguel Indurain, and so far on this climb, he hasn't been able to respond to the acceleration of Rominger at all. John Unzaga is the teammate there at the front of Tony Rominger, and here, number 159, is Oliveira Rincon, the rider who won on the first day in the Pyrenees, scoring a first ever win for Colombia. Now let's have a look today, Paul, at the face here of Miguel Indurain. He's watched these riders sprint away from him, and at the moment he hasn't caught up.
Well, he hasn't. He's got one teammate with him. Number 6 there was Julian Gorospe. They were just picking up Robert Miller, who was in this group just before, but you can see now the pressure of Unzaga and Tony Rominger. They're going away. The gap is 22 seconds. Rominger has really put in a fantastic effort over the last 2 days to try and crack Indurain, and he cannot respond to these accelerations in the mountains.
There's Tony Rominger riding alongside John Unzaga, who's turning out to be his first lieutenant here in the mountains, and a very good pacemaker indeed.
Well, he said at the start of the tour, he said, my team is the best team in the world. He was very unfortunate to lose those two riders early in the Tour de France, who he'd brought into the Tour de France just for the team time trial, which is why he lost so much time. But the rest of the team in the mountains have been much stronger than the Banesto squad. Still, Julian Gorospe, number 6, setting the tempo for Miguel Indurain. He's not going to panic because he has over 5 minutes advantage over Tony Rominger. But what will be important is when we go over the top of the next climb, the Col de l'Aubisque, how far ahead Rominger is, because it's an awful long way to the finish and he won't get any help from anyone else in this group.
Tony Rominger's imminent victory in the King of the Mountains competition is quite an achievement for a man whose summer performances till recently have always been hampered by chronic hay fever. A bout of spring training in the Colorado mountains and the attentions of Dr Michele Ferrari, though, have seen to that.
I couldn't do nothing. I had this the first 3 years that had many problems. But in the final, my doctor said when you are happy, it can be. When you are getting older, it's passing like that, and it passed.
At 32, Rominger is something of a late developer in cycling. He's only recently being viewed as a possible big race winner after victories in the last 2 Tours of Spain. He now enjoys a home in Monte Carlo and a world ranking of number 2, but a win in the '93 Tour de France still looks a little out of reach. Yesterday, his constant attacks had Indurain in the most difficulty we've seen this year. But with only 3 seconds one back off the Spaniard, today Rominger will need the biggest break of the Tour so far if he's to stand any chance of challenging Indurain.
Just 3 kilometres now to climb to the top of the Col du Tourmalet, and Jaskula doing more than his fair share today, now willing to help out. They're sensing at last they're climbing with the freedom of climbers without the annoying appearance of Miguel Indurain sitting there, number 2, number 3 position in that imposing yellow jersey. For once and for the first time in this year's Tour de France, he is not with these riders. Might be, Paul, that he was hurt yesterday and he's taking a gamble today because it's a long, flat run into the finish.
Well, I don't think he will try and panic himself, and he's tried. He really had to pull a lot out of the bottle yesterday to keep in contact with Tony Rominger. This climb is a long, hard climb, and he obviously isn't going to panic because there are over 70 kilometres to go to the finish from the top of the Col de l'Aubisque, and he doesn't want to go into the red zone too quickly, so he's going to let Rominger play. The gap at the moment is 35 seconds, which is quite easily to be picked up on the descent.
He's such a marvellous attacking rider, Claudio Chiappucci. And Rominger and Jaskula now seem to be making the decision themselves here. They've got rid of Rincon, and they've also got rid of Unzaga, who made such great running.
There's just 2 riders in front now. Unzaga and Rincon have just been dropped, and this is quite an incredible move because these 2 riders are exceptional rouleurs, as they call them in France. They're very good riders on the flat, good time trialists. If they can get over the top together, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Miguel Indurain to try and come back to them.
Well, remember a couple of years ago when it was Indurain and Chiappucci that did exactly this and went across the mountains in the Pyrenees, winning the day. It was Chiappucci who won by a single second from Indurain. Indurain took the race lead. Now, wouldn't it be a turnaround if that would have happened today? 4 years a professional, Zenon Jaskula, absolutely brilliant amateur rider for Poland, returning professional rather late, and now coming good in this his second Tour de France. Drink taken on board there by Claudio. Indeed, another unhappy day for Miguel at the moment. His face there is a grimace. Mejia following. Mejia is going to lose that second place overall for sure, I think, because he's never attacked in the mountains, which is his strong point. He won't ride a good time trial. If he rides like he did the other week in the time trial midway through the race, which was a bad one, and that will probably cost him second overall. And in fact, Jaskula and Rominger are very conscious of the inability to ride the time trial of Mejia.
But really is quite amazing how Miguel Indurain has been so calm and collected so far. And I think you mentioned this morning the fact that for a climber, he's just so heavy. He's 12.5 stone. It's amazing that he's got over the climb so far. I spoke with Eddie Merckx earlier in the year, and he said, I can't understand why riders do not attack Indurain in the mountain, because it's impossible for a man of that weight to get over these mountains in the front. 1 kilometre to go for the leaders.
And the flag from Brittany on the left of our picture, though, you may have just caught a glimpse of it. It seems a long time ago now since these riders were racing through the roads of Brittany. Lovely crowd up here. It's very early morning. Local time here is, well, it's just after midday now here in France. And I should imagine when the crowd came up this morning, it was bitterly cold, but the weather has warmed a little bit as Jaskula, perhaps by way of reminding Rominger that he doesn't just follow wheels as well as win stages, he can also share in the pacemaking, because they've certainly teamed together today.
And once they go over the top and start the descent, the first part, as I explained, is very tricky. Then it's a very good descent down to the bottom of the Col de l'Aubisque, and the two of them, I'm sure, will work perfectly together and put even more pressure onto Miguel Indurain.
And it's 40 seconds now back to Miguel Indurain. He's conceded the most time he's ever conceded on a mountain in this year's race. The trouble is, he's taking a gamble that he can come back on the flatter roads, and it's now up to these two to try and keep the rhythm going.
Well, that's a big gamble to take when there are only 3 or 4 days left to go in the Tour de France, and I'm amazed to see that he's cracked. But I could see the telltale signs on his face yesterday and the day before the rest day. The first time I've ever seen him grimacing in pain in the mountains in the Tour de France, and it really is a fantastic finale to this year's Tour.
I would agree entirely. 17 kilometres, we caught a quick glimpse there of the caption. 17 kilometres the climb, which is just over 10 miles. Average gradient of around 7%, so it's a really hard, steady, steep climb. And in fact, it is Jaskula who has continually made the pace as we've come up towards now the summit of the Col du Tourmalet. 2,150 metres down the slope a little bit. We've got Rincon and Unzaga, but they're dropping away from it now. And another superb crowd here. Yesterday, coming off the top of the Plateau, the cars were coming down until midnight, and that was some 7 hours after the Tour de France finished there. There were that many people up the mountain. Back to the top now of the Col du Tourmalet. Tony Rominger sprints clear, and up comes the Daily News. Neither of them wanted to read on the way down, so it can't be that cold out there, Paul, with Rominger taking the lead over Zen and Jaskula for the points. And now he's more or less making the King of the Mountains competition his. Oh, that's why he didn't want the newspaper. He's carrying a racing cape today as he starts the long descent.
But you can see this is the first part of the descent, and it is very dangerous with those switchbacks before we get onto the much straighter roads near the bottom.
So Rominger, Jaskula, Rincon, Unzaga are the next two riders up, and Unzaga is going to do what his team leader can do, and that's win the sprint. Oh, well, I've spoken too soon. I've spoken too soon, because Rincon, I don't know what he did there, but he almost pushed Unzaga out of the way. He goes over in third place. And up comes the main field. Franco Bona just in front of them. Claudio Chiappucci here. And look at the time gap, Paul. 50 seconds. The yellow jersey now on the defensive for the first time in this year's Tour de France. Miguel Indurain goes over the top of the Col du Tourmalet, 50 seconds behind the leaders on the road today. And one of those leaders is Tony Rominger, the King of the Mountain.
Shortly, we'll announce the winner of a trip for two flying Cathay Pacific to Paris, plus an outfit worn by riders in Le Tour with accessories from Avocet, Giraud and Time. Good luck.
Well, the situation we saw there on the Col du Tourmalet has changed now as the riders struggle towards the top of the Col d'Aubisque. Indurain caught up with Tony Rominger, and with it came a small group. And now Claudio Chiappucci has attacked again. The rider who fell back to the Indurain group on the Tourmalet. You can't keep him down, can you? Here he is now heading this charge. John Unzaga is the rider in the middle, and Massimo Garotto is the rider at the back. 3 riders in the lead. The last time check was 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So there's Indurain taking a drink, and off goes the feeding bottle as a souvenir. And it is Gerard Rouet who is holding the pace high at the front of a group which is getting steadily larger here on the climb of the Aubisque. On the start line this morning, 137 starters, as we told you at the beginning of the show. Not starting this morning, Erik Breukink, the champion of Holland, and getting off his bike on the way. The green jersey winner of the Tour last year, Laurent Jalabert, has abandoned. So in all now, we've lost 44 riders in this year's Tour. 31.5 kilometres now so far today, but it's been mostly uphill. And the Tour dipping inside a record speed for the first time today. It's now averaging 38.898 kilometres an hour since we started out from the Vendée region. Indurain in yellow, Rominger in the polka dot, and the green jersey, Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov.
Yes, I think Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov is going to be a very happy man when he gets to the top of the Aubisque, because surely he'll just be able to see the Eiffel Tower of Paris on the horizon there. These are the riders who are just going to come over the top of the climb now. Chiappucci is an incredible man. He fought all the way up the Col du Tourmalet. He got caught by the yellow jersey group. As soon as it all came back together, he went away again.
And he's going over the top, but he's gone over the top alongside John Unzaga and Girotto. And in fact, they're just coming up to the top here. So Chiappucci gets the prize at the top of the climb. And the average speed is moving up a little bit now, 32.6. They've moved after having 1 and 2 rapid descents. And the gap to the chasing group is still around 4 minutes and 55 seconds. That was the last time check we were given. And it looks as though Rouet has got control of the front of the big field again. And here are the 3 leaders on the way down the very narrow twisting road of the Col d'Aubisque. And Girotto prefers, it seems, to descend quite quickly. He's gone up to the front, Chiappucci in the middle, and John Unzaga at the back here.
Again, typical of many of the Pyrenean descents. You can see how the road is rutted in the corners, and these roads here are so dangerous because there's a very thick amount of gravel on the surface, and it really is dangerous going around the corners, because that's when you can lose the back wheel and you're straight into one of these rock faces. But Girotto doesn't seem to be worried about that at the moment, and he's setting the pace all the way down.
And here's the field now coming up, while the 3 leaders are already a long way down the Col d'Aubisque, making a run for the finishing line in Pau. Gerard Rouet continues to set the pace on the climb. Oliveira Rincon in that mauve jersey. There's Alvaria Mejia, 37, still second overall. But he's going to have to fight for that place now, because the mountains are behind, and that should have been his strong point, as the main field, generally regrouped, now goes over the top of the Col d'Aubisque. Goodbye to the Pyrenees, and 5 minutes 19 seconds the gap to the 3 leaders. The 3 leaders, though, are down the mountain now and trying to strike for home. It's a long way, and John Unzaga seemingly willing to work with the other 2, and so there's a chance yet they'll make it to the finish in Pau before the field. And so the charge down the mountain now. They're looking for 5 minutes, this group, containing Miguel Indurain. And the Ariosto rider, Rolf Yerman, is the man driving the charge. And it seems that the Ariostos would like to bring this race back together again, and so they could produce perhaps the winner from the sprint. These are the 3 leaders now on the outskirts of Pau. It's been a long run off the mountains at 5 kilometres to go. So the 3 leaders are now just under the 5 kilometres banner here on this final day in the mountains in the Tour de France. And the men that made a run for it as the Col d'Aubisque was starting, Claudio Chiappucci, Massimo Girotto and John Unzaga, they've gambled, they've gone for it, and they've kept their lead. At one stage, the lead was up to 5.5 minutes, and then the Ariosto team started the chase down, because Claudio Chiappucci here endangered the 5th place overall of their man Bjorn Ries from Denmark. They seem to have at least slowed down the effect here, because they have caught them back by a couple of minutes. They've stopped Chiappucci claiming that 5th place overall, but Andy Hampsten's 6th place overall is most definitely still in danger, and Hampsten on the Motorola team.
Been a great job over the last few kilometres by the Ariosto team, but they just haven't managed to bring it down. They broke the back of it to begin with by bringing it back from 5 minutes to 3 minutes, and now over the last few kilometres, it's just been a matter of seconds at a time that the breakaway has been reeled in.
I think what they've done, Paul, is at least they have saved the 5th place of Bjorn Ries, because they pulled back the required time gap to keep Chiappucci away from Ries in 5th place. But even so, this young man is taking time out of Ries, and he might well get it back in the next couple of days, yet this tour is not over yet. There's the kite, and 1 kilometre to go, and I think this has got to be the biggest crowd I can remember here in the city of Pau. For the 51st time the Tour de France has come here.
It's an incredible crowd that has turned out. Now is the time, as we've gone under the red kite, that the tactics are going to start. Massimo Girotto has waited as long as possible there to recuperate before we come up to the last 400 or 500 metres, which is when the sprint is going to start. He waited for Chiappucci to make all the effort, and now Chiappucci has got the best place at the moment, but I feel sure that he'll move to the front as we get nearer the 500 metres to go. And you can see now is the time when they're trying to decide who is going to win the stage.
And Girotto doesn't want the first position. He doesn't know where they are. That's why he's riding tight on the left to make them attack him on his right shoulder. Now he's got the wheel of John Unzaga, and Chiappucci quite clearly thinking of a stage victory. 400 metres to go, and Girotto fears Chiappucci most. He's trying to keep the pace reasonable. At the same time, he doesn't want to make the effort yet. At 300 to go, it's Unzaga who's gone. And that's what, in fact, Girotto wanted. He's got the wheel of John Unzaga, but John Unzaga has got some speed, and I'm not too sure whether Girotto can go, but he goes now. Massimo Girotto on the left, Chiappucci comes on the right. It's going to be very, very close on the line, but I think on the line, Chiappucci has got it. Girotto looks across at him, his mouth was wide open, he doesn't believe it. But Claudio Chiappucci was given the stage victory. As we switch down the road, it looks like Bjorn Ries is here and clear.
Well, that was a superb move, and that's one that I definitely would not have been waiting for, and I think that is probably how he managed to catch everybody unawares. The team has done an incredible job over the last 20-30 kilometres for him. They've chased down that group, they brought it down to as little as possible. Now it's going to be under 1.5 minutes on the line, and he slipped away from everybody. This is Etikimov coming up to take 4th place.
And so Ries gets 4th place on the stage, 1 minute and 17 seconds down as Vyacheslav Yekimov comes home too. He will take the 5th place on the stage today, 1 minute and 24 back. And all of the riders in this big chase group now come in today with the cheer you can probably hear, reserved for the rider who should now go on to win the Tour de France, Miguel Indurain. Well, I know many of you in Australia are aspiring racing cyclists. Well, you could do a lot worse than follow in the footsteps of Claudio Chiappucci. There's a man who suffers every day. He gets dropped from the group, he fights his way back, and today he was rewarded with his stage win in this year's Tour de France. Well deserved indeed. He won it in the sprint today from Massimo Girotto, and unfortunately for Massimo, that's the 2nd time he's finished 2nd on a stage in this year's Tour de France. John Unzaga was 3rd. Bjorn Ries, realising his 5th place overall was in danger, had to break away from the field today to finish 4th, 1 minute and 17 seconds after Chiappucci. Vyacheslav Yekimov was 5th, and Jean-Philippe Dauger of France came home in 6th place. Now, we often talk about the leaders of the Tour de France, but what about the rest of the riders in this race? The men who just about scrape in inside the time limit. Alan Piper is now with one such rider.
I don't feel me well now. Oh, it was a hard day, eh?
Yeah, I know, mate. But you made it, mate. That's what it's all about. Normally we don't talk to the last guys.
Yeah, but it was the most difficult day of the race, of the 3
tour.
weeks of the tour.
But now you finished it, so you know you can get to Paris anyway.
Yeah, it's now not so difficult anymore, and I'm glad I'm still in the race.
Did you find it difficult today just to get to the end?
Yeah, I'm riding very bad uphill now at the moment, and I was all riding alone, and then came 3 men with me, and we can make tempo, and it was okay.
Yeah? But it must be nice when you know you got there.
Yeah, okay. Alan?
See you, Yella.
Well, he's a great friend of mine, Yella Nydam, and I've always thought it's a great name when you wear the yellow jersey. His father, by the way, was the World Pursuit Champion in 1961. Let's have a look now at the overall situation in the race. No change at all in the top 5, but that breakaway by Claudio Chiappucci has now brought him into 6th place overall. He's gone ahead of the American Andy Hampston. And Phil Anderson home and dry again today. He'll be seeing Paris, rest assured on that. Well, I think Miguel Indurain, you know, is now glad that the Pyrenees is behind him. He had another rough ride today, but in the end it all came out right, and he should now go on to win the Tour de France when we go to Paris and the Champs-Élysées.